Hello, everyone. My name is Shannon Prather and the Marketing Cultivator at GISinc. I'd like to thank you for joining us for today's webinar, Cityworks and GIS, Work Smarter by Breaking Down Enterprise Silos. Today, we'll explore the Cityworks API potential by expanding the GIS footprint into billing systems, financial systems, SCADA, fleet management, and even pulling construction cost estimation into the Cityworks platform for unparalleled insight and decision-making. We encourage you to post questions throughout the webinar as we'll answer as many as possible at the conclusion of the episode. This webinar is being recorded. As a quick introduction, GISinc has been serving the Esri community for 28 years. As an employee-owned company, we have 160 passionate professionals that have one core purpose, and that's to help our customers create insight through location technology. We do this by providing premier GIS services to federal and state and local governments, as well as to commercial industries. GISinc holds the industry's only double platinum business partner status, being both a platinum partner of Esri and Cityworks. We are raving fans of both companies and the technology they provide, and that's why I'm so proud to have Cityworks join us in this presentation. Now, without further delay, I'm excited to welcome our two presenters, Thomas Wilson, GISinc Cityworks Architect, and George Mustakis, Cityworks Vice President of Enterprise Solutions. Thanks so much for tuning in, everyone, and I hope you're ready to see some really cool ways to leverage GIS. We'll first get started with George from Cityworks. George?
Yeah, thank you, Shannon, and thank you everyone for joining us today. Really excited to show you what we have in store and show you how you can maximize Cityworks in ways that might be a little different than what your day-to-day involves. Next slide, please. So all of you on the call here today have this situation. You're all responsible for the care and the feeding and the improvement of the infrastructure assets that make up the cities that we live in and raise our families in. And of course, it's obviously very important to maintain them at the highest possible level. And with Cityworks, the approach that we take is we maximize the location, their location, and for you to leverage to do the work. In fact, all of the work that you do shares geography or shares location as the underpinning of the work that you do, where things are, where the proximity is to other things, where the proximity is of serious issues to citizens and identifying those citizens that are going to be affected and helping them. Next slide, please. And over the years, you've done very, very well at improving the way you engage with the citizens. And again, you're leveraging that geographic context and information to provide them ways that they can not only communicate with you and show you where these problems are that are affecting them, but vice versa, that way that you can inform them in a similar way to say, this is what's going to be happening. And you've deployed numerous systems, not just Cityworks, to maintain that information in a consistent way, in a transparent way. And of course, you've amassed an enormous amount of information over the years in which you want to use to analyze and make future decisions that are, smarter and more cognizant of the limited funding and the dollars that you have. Next slide, please. And yet you do this in the face of tremendous challenges. You do this with mounting regulations. You do this with limited resources. You have to, even though you're doing things right, you still have to report. And so you definitely need a variety of technologies that can come together to help you deal with this. Next slide, please. And so it isn't just one system that can support your needs, right? Because you have all these different various groups in your organizations, and one can't come to the table and provide it all. But it is important to tie the organization together so that you can unify the communications and establish a common thread of understanding, and then be able to keep the information up to date. You want better communication with the stakeholders. You want to get the information into and out of the field with as little friction as possible so that you can comply with a variety of regulations and mandates and also serve your communities better. And so with Cityworks, next slide please, we've taken a lot of care in deliberately determining how best to do this, because Cityworks is phenomenal at the operations side and the day-to-day side, but it providing the only path to consume information isn't enough. And so we've developed Cityworks to be a platform, in addition to software, to be a platform and to provide a variety of ways through which information from Cityworks can make it to your other business systems and other stakeholders. And the other way, input information into Cityworks from these outside sources. And so I'm going to start at the bottom there and talk a little bit about EURL, or enterprise URL. This is a really great tool that we developed some years ago that basically is a one-way push of information out of Cityworks and into a JSON style feature service that impersonates or looks exactly like a map that can be deployed and distributed within ArcGIS. And that information doesn't only have to be represented within native ArcGIS tools. Other technologies like GeoCortex or FME can leverage that information so that you can do more with it. And it's based on stored queries. So you, the user, decide what is the information that I want to publish out into a map and incorporate it into my maps. And of course, it's dynamic. So as things occur, EURL then updates the map and you see the information in real time. So the next one I want to talk about is up at the top there, named webhooks. And similar to EURL, it is a one-way push of information from Cityworks into a third-party system. But the really unique and special thing about webhooks is that it's based on actions that take place inside of Cityworks. So if we were to populate, let's say, a certain value within a service request, the webhook can be configured, not programmed, and that's the other special thing. There's no code involved in this. It can be configured so that it can capture a payload of data from the service request and send it out to 311, for example. It could do the same thing with financial information. So from a work order, when a work order is closed, package up the information, ship it back out to a finance system. Okay, and then lastly, in the middle there are APIs. And our APIs are truly the foundation of the system, and it is the layer of the technology that we build Cityworks around. And what's great, of course, about the APIs is that it provides a two-way interaction or a two-way engagement with the Cityworks platform. So not only can you use it to take information out of Cityworks and bring it into your business systems, you can basically make your business systems first-class citizens of the Cityworks platform so that you can bring in information from your systems that are out there. Maybe it's HR, maybe it's some other capital planning tool or what have you. Bring in that information into Cityworks so that you can perform the important work that you do. And so with that, I'm going to hand it back over to you, Shannon, so we can learn more about how these people can use all that.
Yeah, thanks, George. I'm going to launch a quick poll just to kind of get a pulse of the audience. Are you all currently using integrations with Cityworks? We're going to explore some of those today. And while you guys are submitting your responses, I just wanted to take a minute to encourage you guys to submit questions in the chat box. We'll be answering all at the conclusion of the episode. All right, just another few seconds. Thank you so much for participating. All right, we'll close this out and share those results. Oh, interesting. So it looks like about 40% of us are currently using integrations. That's great. You'll get to see a little more of what other people are doing in different parts of their business. 42% not yet. This is a good place to learn. And if it's not applicable, we just appreciate you joining and finding out more. And with that, I'm going to pass it back over, or pass it to Thomas with GISinc.
All right, thanks, Shannon. So what we're going to talk about today, much to relate to George's slide earlier was the different business systems, the different functional roles within the organization that can benefit from integrations. So here are some of the integration points that we're going to be discussing today. So we've been working with Cityworks for a number of years now, been doing integrations for quite a while. So these are some of the areas that we're going to focus on today. You know, a lot of these streamlining business processes are one of those topics that are top of mind for a lot of our customers. And so this is where you know, integrations can play a key role in that streamlining process. And so what we're going to show today are some conceptual examples, some higher level overviews of the integration process, and that were used to solve some real world solutions. So overall, the integration strategy as it pertains to Cityworks, which again relates to kind of the slide that George just showed, there's 3 ways of doing this. Generally, that is through the use of the GIS, you know, through map integrations with the application, through EURL, those types of things, as well as at the database level as well, through scripts or triggers. But what we're going to be covering primarily today are going to be integrations through the APIs. And so those are programmatic integrations between Cityworks and third-party solutions. All right. So the first example here is IoT, so the Internet of Things. Really, IoT is based around sensor-based information being sent to other systems. So in this case, we're talking real-time sensor information that's going to be shipped out to other platforms, other applications. And so, you know, from an industry standard, you know, there's an estimate of around 50 billion sensors are going to be in existence by about 2025. So that's a lot of sensors out there gathering data. So now we've got to come up with a way to, how do we start utilizing this in a little bit more, in a little better way. So what we've done is we've been really invested in the intersect between IoT and spatial technology. And well, you know, you might ask, well, how does this help me? And our answer is work smarter is one of the initiatives that we've put together. So essentially what we're trying to do is to make the technology work for you and allow you to tackle work that gets done when it needs to be done. So you're not driving around trying to inspect certain things just to be able to maintain them. The sensors can tell you when they need to be maintained. So this process really allows for greater operational efficiency and saves you money. And so the general concept behind this is the sensor collects the data from that area. It communicates that to a base station essentially, and then that is then sent out to whether it be GIS for mapping processes or into Cityworks into the asset management system. So we're consuming that data from sensors. It's being processed in real time, and we're able to automate the data that's coming back and automate those work activity creation pieces within Cityworks. So, you know, some examples, right? We're talking about working with only kicking off work when it needs to be kicked off. An example might be, say, a storm drain. We have some clients that go out there and check storm drains periodically to see if they need to be cleaned out. So within the IoT ecosystem, there's sensors that exist that allow for monitoring the capacity of those storm drains, and that allows us to then to kick off work orders to say, hey, you know, this thing is filled. We need to go clean that out. Another one might be, you know, for indoors. So think, you know, temperature sensors. If you know, you've got a server room out there, server room gets too hot, a work order can be kicked off to look at the HVAC system. Those types of examples are kind of some of the things that IoT technology can be used for. And again, all of that stuff can be fed into Cityworks as work activities. So a lot of organizations already have sensors on their network. So this kind of allows us to take advantage of what is already there. So our next example we're going to talk about is kind of akin to this IoT concept, where it's sensor-based technology, and that really speaks to the AVL functionalities that some organizations utilize. And so within like I said, AVL is sensor based, whether it be sensors on the vehicle or being read and communicated to your AVL host and then being processed from there. And so that's kind of where the integration comes in, is once that data is made available, then we try to figure out what we're going to do with it, right? So some of those problems that people run into are, okay, where are my vehicles, where are my crews? We need to be more agile in response. I need to be able to know who's the closest. Maybe I can dispatch the closest crew. So from trying to tackle those, this type of information can be fed into Cityworks a number of different ways. It can be fed into Cityworks using our GIS server, right? We've got locations coming in, and I just want a heads up display or an awareness of where my vehicles or crews are located. So I can see that within the Cityworks map, see my vehicle locations, and be able to be able to make assignments dynamically as those vehicle locations change. You also have the ability to feed that same information through other applications, or say, for example, GeoEvent Server. If we feed that stuff through, if we feed those data points through GeoEvent Server, then we can start mining that information and sending that into Cityworks. So say I'm doing my snowplow. We can trigger plow up, plow down events to send data to Cityworks, or if we're putting out salt, how much salt is being put out, and those sensors are going to allow us to maybe feed that into the Cityworks material page. So it allows us to do that stuff without having that redundant data entry that has to occur a lot of times. So that's some of the stuff that's going to happen on the AVL side. Now, akin to AVL would be kind of a fleet example. So a lot of fleet systems out there have a similar approach, right? So vehicles will have sensors, wireless sensors on them, that when they pull up to the fuel head to refuel, that information is then sent wirelessly to the fuel system. So the fuel system can pull odometer readings, engine warnings, those types of things from the vehicle, and those can be fed into Cityworks to produce preventative maintenance work activities. So for example, every time a vehicle comes in, that odometer reading is downloaded, say every 3,000 miles, a work order kicks off for an oil change, or every 50,000 miles, it kicks off a particular set of preventative maintenance actions that you got to take against that particular vehicle. So what that does is allows you to take that, your vehicle operator doesn't have to remember to bring his truck in, that the system's going to tell him when he needs to do that. So next we're gonna shift gears a bit and talk about something a little bit different here. So our next topic, revolves around finance, planning, talking about ERP systems, enterprise resource planning, as well as HR systems. Most of you probably have an ER system or ERP system, or some of the various components in various applications. But a lot of issues that we hear are the redundant data entry between one system and another, right? So this is particularly cumbersome for many organizations where they have, they're managing, in this example, managing employee information in one system and then having to also manage that employee information in Cityworks. And so, keeping those two data repositories in sync becomes a lot of work. And so that's where integrations can come in to help synchronize that information between the two systems. So this eliminates the data redundancy and leads to more accurate information. And so, one example might be, like I said, employee records. So, as you know, Cityworks has a list of employees that it uses for assigning work, adding labor cost to work activities, etc. And so this integration can, keep your ERP system the system of record, because that's where the employee information is stored, whether it be their title, their status, their pay rates, all that good stuff. And that can be synchronized into Cityworks. So as new employees are created, those can be sent to Cityworks via the integration. As their pay rates increase or updated based on cost of living increases or whatnot, those can be changed in Cityworks through this integration. As employees are retired, they can be deactivated in Cityworks. And the same approach can be used for sending information back to the financial system, for material costs and labor costs and things of that sort. So, this really allows it to essentially be mostly a hands-off, right? That information is maintained in the system that it needs to be maintained in, and Cityworks is displaying an up-to-date copy of that data within itself. So, on the topic of reducing redundant data entry, our next integration concept here is going to be around utility billing. So again, this kind of goes to some finance, operation and maintenance as far as work activity linkage and whatnot. But I'm sure a lot of you, or many of you out there, are using a utility billing system to track your utility customers. So most of these systems also have a work order management, service order management functionality within it, but a lot of our customers choose to use Cityworks for that, and so we will integrate those two. So again, we don't have to do that redundant data entry, and so this integration, this integration is going to allow for the maximizing of operational efficiency. Okay, so as calls come in and they get requested for disconnects, rereads, new meters. Those activities can be logged in the utility billing system and then sent to Cityworks for completion. And oftentimes those can be done directly within the within the utility billing system, and triggered that work activity to be created in Cityworks. So that's as far as moving work order information back and forth. Also, whenever that work order is complete, the status of that work order or additional information like last meter read can be fed back into that utility system. And so there's no having to look in both systems to get that information. On a simpler note, from an integration standpoint, oftentimes users within Cityworks, they want to see that utility billing data directly in Cityworks. And so what we'll do is we'll join that utility billing data, that account information. So the who it is, where it is, any information based on that, the meter information, all of that is then joined in Cityworks or joined in our GIS and then fed into Cityworks through the same map service process that is native to the application itself. And that allows the users to actually select meters or different assets in the Cityworks map and see that billing information live from their system. So, that can be fed into each system bidirectionally. So, in addition to the data moving between these applications, one of the other advantages is that the folks that work in the utility billing department don't necessarily have to learn Cityworks, right? They don't have to learn another platform to use, because that's where your maintenance guys come in, your operations and maintenance folks. So what they can do is they can continue to do their work and just trigger those work activities based on information coming into that utility billing system, and then be updated dynamically based on information that is being collected in Cityworks. So that just makes things run a little bit smoother, makes information flow between departments a whole lot easier. So we've talked about integrating with other third-party systems. The next concept here is what I call internal integrations with Cityworks. So essentially integrating Cityworks with itself. Now that may sound a little odd, but really what we're talking about is the same process, but that other application you're reaching out to integrate with is Cityworks. And so, most often this stems from our customers asking us to extend the Cityworks platform. So give me some additional functionality that is not included out of the box. And so that's where we kind of approach these internal integrations, right? So what are they striving to achieve? They're striving to achieve, again, operational efficiency, and they want the functionality of the application to be really tailored to their business process. And so that's where this comes in, right? So we have a couple different ways of doing this. So our first one we'll talk about is webhooks. And so George mentioned this earlier about being able to trigger events in Cityworks and have information sent to other applications. Well, in this case, we've taken that webhook and then turned it around and made it send information back to Cityworks. So let's say, for instance, I want to automatically create a child work order when a particular work order is closed. Okay, I can do that. I can automatically create that next work activity. It's not cyclical, but it's just a very, depending on a different value in that work order, kick out a certain child work order automatically. I can create a, follow-up work order, a maintenance work order based on an inspection when a condition score is below a certain value. So I can start putting those data points into my webhook and have it perform actions based on those, based on that meeting their criteria that comes from that work activity. Next, is really talking about integrations with either database triggers or standalone scripts, right? So this, like I said, database triggers, scripts can be run on a schedule. Database triggers can be executed when certain conditions are met within the script itself. We can use those. Both of those can be really used to move data around, can be used to create work activities, kind of very similar to the way webhooks works, just in a little bit different form. And you can use either of those to do a variety of things based on a periodic basis. The last example here that we'll talk about is more consuming or making API calls directly within the application itself. So most of these involve user interface modifications through modifications to the XML. So what we're doing is talking about going into the XML and inserting logic into the XML to go out to the Cityworks API, grab information, and then display it on the user interface. So let's say I'm in the work order and I want to see caller information directly in the work order screen without having to go back to the service request to get that information. So what I can do is on my work order screen, I can insert a bit of code that goes out to the service request API, grabs that information, and then returns it right there on the main work order page. That way I don't have to bounce back and forth between the two different work activities. And this is not just necessarily for reading information. It's also used, you can also use this same type of concept for taking action within the application. So let's say I have a PM in the system that has a number of different tasks that are associated with it. Well, I'm not going in there necessarily and closing each task as I do them, because maybe I just go out and do the whole PM and then I close it out. Well, if you want a button in the system that says, hey, close all, complete all PM tasks, and one button does the same as maybe multiple button clicks does without that bit of customization. So you can really use it to streamline those day-to-day work activities that you're doing within the application. This can be really powerful. As you can see, there's a number of different things that you can do. Integrations across the board are so varied, and it's really kind of up to the imagination of the organization as to what they want to do and how they want to do it. One of the best things about this approach, as far as doing internal integrations, is that there are no API licenses needed. So because you're integrating with Cityworks and not a separate third-party application, you don't have to have the API licenses like you would if you were integrating with a separate application. And all of that API functionality across all APIs is available within the system. If you're integrating with Cityworks itself. So, like I mentioned, these examples that we've seen so far have really been focused on your day-to-day process, your day-to-day activities that you're doing within the system, or within these various systems. But now, what we're going to kind of jump into next is, what do we do as far as integrations on thinking ahead? What's next? What we're doing, planning in the future. So what we're going to do is I'm going to shift it over to Shannon to talk about a poll. We're going to take another poll really focused around how we get estimates into Cityworks and finding the right locations to apply our capital dollars, right? How do we get information to best budget, to best plan what we're going to do from a construction standpoint, whether that be CIP projects or maintenance activities, and how we can utilize GIS and Cityworks to do this. So I'll hand it over to Shannon now.
Thanks, Thomas. Yep, so you should see the poll on your screen. He'll be talking more about this momentarily, but would you like access to construction cost estimations in Cityworks? Wanted to take a quick check of the audience. And while you're answering that, I just wanted to bring your attention to the GoToWebinar control panel. Notice that there are 3 handouts for additional reading. One was provided by Cityworks, and then the other 2 are from GISinc. Thank you all for contributing those responses. I'm going to go ahead and close the poll and publish the results. All right, so it looks like a resounding yes, or maybe doesn't apply. So very good to know. I'm sure you're going to be excited about seeing the upcoming information. Thomas?
All right. Thanks, Shannon. All right, so here, what we're going to talk about next is, so as you can see from the polling question, right, there's a lot of people that want to be able to estimate cost within Cityworks. And so the next example I'm going to show here is going to illustrate how that can be done within the application. So we have, we all have a list of maintenance items, as long as our arm. And the first question that a lot of managers are faced with when proposing either a CIP or a maintenance activity is, how much is this going to cost me? Or how much is this going to cost to do? Do I have the budget for this? A lot of this estimation can be done manually, which is the way most folks are doing it, but that takes a lot of time. A lot of different pieces of information that have to be taken into account to generate these estimates. And then it's a lot of time typing that into a system. And this time-consuming process really is going to be repeated various times, either through the project itself or through the every time a new CIP is proposed or a new maintenance activity is proposed. And again, that just compounds that time that you're spending doing this. So most organizations struggle with getting this information in quick and it being accurate. And so really what we've done to help address these issues is what's called Cost Map. So originally we've developed this solution to utilize your existing investment in your GIS. Okay, so originally this was developed as a standalone app, and essentially what it does is it uses Gordian's RSMeans data, which is one of the leading construction cost estimation databases out there. And it uses that RSMeans data to take into account all the GIS assets that you have selected and then apply cost to those for either creation or replacement. So the data that you're getting from RSMeans is accurate down to the 3-digit zip code, and those costs are updated quarterly at those same 3-digit zip levels. So these are based on market trends. So say, example, a hurricane comes through and to a community, and the fact that comes through is going to kind of throw off the estimates or throw off the market as far as labor, materials, equipment, because there's going to be such more of a demand on it. Well, RSMeans takes that into account. So what they're doing is they're updating these estimates quarterly at that local level. So it's not at a national level. So you're going to be able to see that those new market trends essentially reflected in that next update from RSMeans. And all that stuff happens in the background, right? You're not having to maintain a cost estimation database. What we're going to show you here is going to be utilizing through an integration a dynamic live feed from that RSMeans information, that RSMeans database. So the overall approach for this is going to be, you're selecting those GIS assets, right? You have your GIS assets in the system, you have attributes associated with those, and it's going to be able to go out and, based on those attributes within the GIS, go out and grab the proper cost based on the type of material, the size, the asset type itself. And it's going to allow us to get that estimation and be able to compare, not only get the estimation and plan budgetarily speaking, but also assess performance, your actual performance versus your estimated performance as far as cost goes. And so this helps you make decisions based on available funding. Can I go ahead and do this now based on the funding I have, or do I need to do this through more of a planned CIP project later down the road? So it helps not only develop more accurate budgetary forecast, but it also helps you apply your dollars in the correct location and in the correct way. So what I want to do is I want to show you how this works in Cityworks. So I'm going to show you how this add-on within the system can grab cost as well as process them. So. Okay. So here, what I'm going to show you first is that this is a water data set that I'm showing now. And what I'm going to do is, let's say I want to replace this whole section right here. Okay, I want to replace this whole section of infrastructure. So what I can do in Cityworks is I can come in here and I can select the assets within the map. So you'll see those selected below. And again, you know, for those of you that are using Cityworks, you're very well aware that all that information from your GIS that is exposed through your map service is being fed into Cityworks. So we have all the information on our water fittings, service connections, laterals, system valves, etc., on our mains as well. So what I'm going to do is, with all of my assets selected here from the map, I can bounce over to Cityworks, and I want to create a new work order. So we can see here that we have all of the assets that are coming over from our map. So again, this is nothing new here, right? This is standard native functionality within Cityworks. When I create a work order, you'll see that all of those assets come into the system, right, as they normally would through Cityworks. But you can see up here, we have our cost map summary panel. It's working, right? And so what it's doing is it's going out there, it's going out to the RSMeans service, it's grabbing the data based on the asset type, the diameters, the material types, all that good stuff, and it's coming back with an estimation here. And so what you're seeing now, once it comes back with its estimation, is the number of units that are going to be replaced. And you can see here that it knows that, okay, there's so many copper at 3/4 inch, there's so many copper at 1 inch. This one's brass 1 inch, that type of stuff. So it's going out there and finding that information based on the GIS data itself. And what it's doing is it's going out and getting material and labor cost estimates for that. And then it's summing those at the bottom. So you can say, okay, if I'm thinking of replacing this particular section, that it's going to cost me about $13,000 or so, $13,600. And the good thing about this is it's dynamic. So as I go through and I can come up, I can select my assets. I see my estimate here in Cityworks. Let's say I don't need, these 3 water fittings. If I remove those assets from Cityworks, once the work order refreshes, it's going to refresh my cost map summary or my cost estimate. And so the same thing goes for adding work activity. So we went from so you can see that our price went down here, or our total went down. I was looking at labor costs earlier. So our total has changed. If I go in and add more assets, then those costs are going to go up if I add more assets. So this is a dynamic calculation that's happening. Now, if I want to send those cost estimates into Cityworks, we've got a button here that will send those into. So once I click that button, what it's going to do is it's going to go out and it's going to send those into Cityworks as estimated cost. So if I go in and I look at labor costs, I'm going to be able to see all those estimates here in Cityworks. So I can work up my estimate in the main work order panel and then send them into the work order as estimated materials only when I'm ready to. And so you can see the estimated labor costs here. You can see that we have estimated material costs. It follows the same pattern, right? So it's going to be loading all that information into Cityworks, into that work order. Now, if we look at from a performance standpoint, then we have our cost summary that we can utilize. So when this cost summary comes up, you'll see that we have our estimated cost for this. And so as you start to put in your actual labor costs, actual equipment costs, material costs, it's going to do that comparison, and then Cityworks is going to do its calculations down here for you to compare how you're doing based on your goals there. So this allows us to do this pretty quickly, right? So in a work order, what did I do? I've selected my materials or selected my assets. I saw the the estimate in the work order screen, and it was one click to send it into estimated materials. I don't have to type all this stuff in. Of course, now from this point forward, you can edit it if you need to, but the bulk of that information is stored right there in the main work order screen. So as this thing is being updated, those estimates are as well. And so this right now, the add-on that we have right now developed for Cityworks is deployed in Office. So what are we doing? What's next on the list, essentially? So where we're headed with next on this is we're currently working on exposing this in Respond 2.0. So Respond 2.0 that's about to be released or coming out soon is we're already starting to work on trying to integrate this in with that Respond 2.0. Currently we have everything is available for estimating water. By the end of the year this year, we're going to be adding sewer and stormwater, and then by early 2020 we're going to be adding streets, electric, fiber, and a couple other ones as well. Now, this is sold as an add-on for Cityworks. So this is, and it's also kind of sold under the same pricing model that Cityworks does their current add-ons as well. There's no packaged in that. There's no additional API licenses needed for this. You know, because for those folks that do outside integrations with Cityworks know that to do you know, Elm information, you're going to need, you know, the API extended for work orders. That is all included within this add-on licensing. So it uses just what it needs to do cost map, and all that stuff is packaged together. And it's also available now. So we can actually get this installed for water right now, and then as sewer and stormwater come on, those types of assets will be pulled in through the estimation piece as well. So taking a step back, looking at the bigger picture here, what do we, you know, how do you get started with integrating with Cityworks? So there was quite a few folks that wanted to get started integrating. Where do I go from here? Or even those folks that already have integrations that want to expand. So we're going to talk about some things to consider on how you get started with doing integrations in Cityworks. So there's a few things that an organization really needs to do before really jumping headfirst into the integration world. So one of the first things is doing an internal ROI study or you know, review. What's our return on investment? Is this integration worth it, right? Because we're going to have to spend time and money getting this thing put into place, and are we going to benefit from it? You know, is the cost benefit there? So one of the first things to consider is your user benefit. Is this going to benefit your users? Is this going to make their lives easier? How's this going to affect my leadership? How's it going to benefit the managers, the executives in my organization? How's it going to benefit my organization? Are we going to save money? Is this going to make us more efficient? So getting those types of, you know, discussing that internally, getting that information out and open to everybody is extremely important. Otherwise, if it doesn't benefit you, why are you doing it? The second piece is really documenting your business processes. So again, in an internal discussion as to how you want this to work. What are the integration points? How do you want data to move from point A to point B? What data do you want to move from point A to point B? And then how does this integration fit into your workflow? How does that alter your workflow? And is that acceptable? So these two pieces are extremely important. So it's not uncommon for us to start engaging on an integration only to really then stand down because a lot of this work was not done up front. And so it's very important to get this type of stuff discussed internally. So when you're ready to integrate, you're ready to integrate. And we know we have a clear picture. We have a clear picture of what you want, and we have a clear picture for where you want to go. And so with that being done, really the next step, at least from our perspective, is a discovery. So we like to do an integrations discovery with you to discuss all of this stuff, right? So what we do is we come in, we discuss that ROI with you. We come in, do an internal, you know, after your internal review is complete, we discuss the return on investment. How are you going to benefit? How's this going to help you? We work through those documented business processes, and that helps us identify any nuances that might might exist within the process that may steer the approach in different directions. Okay, so talking through that with you helps us get an understanding of what you want to do with it, as also allows us to add some add some other additional context into it, how that applies to the application itself. Talking about technical requirements as well as the technical approach. Can your current applications you want to integrate with support an integration? And then what that might look like from a technical standpoint. So that discovery process is the discovery process, both internal and external with somebody like GISinc, has really proven to be effective and leads to greater success because you don't have that, everything's planned up front. It's not, we get halfway through it and realize, this isn't really what we need, or this isn't really what we want. So the better planning you can do up front, the better likely you are to have this a successful integration. So in closing, if any of these topics are interesting to you, or the solutions are interesting to you, just reach out, let us know. We'd love to talk with you about it. And I guess from there, we'll move on to questions.
Yeah, thank you both so much. We've had a lot of questions come in, and we have a good bit of time to answer most of them. So we'll start from the top. Regarding webhooks and integration, is it carried forward when Cityworks is upgraded?
Yes, those are, you'll notice in the latest version of Cityworks that there's a webhook migration. So there has been, as pieces in the webhook functionality are upgraded and evolved, Cityworks has provided those tools to migrate those webhooks. So that's part of your upgrade process as well.
Very good. I think that this is referring to cost map. Can you sum total labor hours?
Can you sum total labor hours? Yes, the hours themselves. On the labor hours, I know the cost is being pulled in from RSMeans, but the number of hours are not yet present within the data service at this time. It's going primarily on cost, not necessarily number of hours.
Very good. Looks like some more questions about cost map. What is the ballpark cost to use the RSMeans service through Cityworks?
Okay, on that one, I'd have to default to Lucas on that one. Lucas is our product manager for cost map. Maybe he can pop in here and answer that one.
Yeah, thank you, Thomas. So the ballpark, we're using the same model that Cityworks uses for their add-on costing. So it's based on the population size of your utility or your municipality. So it does vary based on the size and amount of data. But ballpark is, we're currently in discussions anywhere. It's going to be between $1,000 and $15,000 a year, depending on your size. Contact us and we could go into details on that specific to your requirements and your situation.
Thanks, Lucas. Another one for an estimation of cost, again, referring to cost map. If the material is not a one-to-one relationship, is there a way to edit and manipulate the estimate to reflect a material change?
Within the Cityworks, or within the service that's coming in from RSMeans is going to give it to you based on how that is represented in your GIS. But from once it goes into Cityworks as estimated materials, then it can be modified from there. Once it's in the application.
Very good. Does the cost estimation integration allow for estimating replacements with different materials? An example being replacing copper with PVC.
That's one of the pieces that we're working towards within Cityworks. So within our standalone cost map application, you can alter different material types, and then those will return different material estimations. So yes, that is coming over into our solution as well.
Very good. Let's see, I think this question might be for George. Can Cityworks help populate missing GIS data?
Yeah, it absolutely can. Cityworks mobile apps have a native integration to ArcGIS Collector. And so while a user of Cityworks is out in the field doing their day-to-day in Cityworks, completing their work orders, completing their inspections, creating new work orders, creating inspections, which they can do also offline, they can also pop over into Collector in that same area and capture new assets or populate the attributes of new assets. And so it absolutely can be a tool. The combination of our mobile app and Collector can be a tool to help solve those needs.
Yeah, and really in addition to that, to kind of build on what George mentioned, work activities in Cityworks, say inspections or work orders, a lot of the information from those that are captured can be sent to the GIS feature itself once that work activity is closed. So you can do some dynamic GIS editing with the work activity itself.
Let's see. With regard to Cost Map, how about installation projects where assets do not exist for you to select them on a map?
I was getting some feedback. Could you repeat that, Shannon?
Sure. How about installation projects where the assets do not yet exist for you to select them on a map?
Okay, so for the typical approach for those would be go ahead and creating those assets in something along the lines of a planning level, if you will. So more like here are proposed assets in your GIS, and once that stuff is filled out, then that estimation can take place because it's all based on the asset that is in the GIS.
Is the cost estimation available at this time for Canadian clients?
That might be a question for Lucas on that one.
I'm going to have to say we'll have to get back to you on that. Make sure Shannon and Thomas get your contact information, and I will talk to RSMeans on how good their Canadian coverage is.
Yep. Yeah. From what I understand, it's North America, Lucas, right? So it should include Canada, correct? That's
correct. I just don't want to put out bad information until I know for sure, but I'm pretty sure that we can make it available in Canada. I just want to make sure before we say that.
Okay, perfect.
Lots of good cost map questions. Just a few more minutes. We'll get through as many as we can, and then we'll reach out if we aren't able to address yours. With cost estimation, can Cityworks estimate new asset construction?
Yes, that's very similar to what the last question was as far as being able to create those assets in a more of a planning layer and then being able to estimate from there.
Very good. Does the cost map for water repairs only count water infrastructure, or does it include street repair costs as well?
So for right now, the example that we showed today was just the water infrastructure. The streets piece is coming in early 2020.
Awesome. For cost estimates, how do you address costs for work in congested areas and working in off hours?
So for estimating, regular time versus overtime, I'm doing a 24-hour presence versus, an 8 to 5 presence. It doesn't do that right now. It does, normal business hour labor time is what it calculates right now. And then but it does do union versus non-union labor. So that is a tool within that as well, within the RSMeans information.
All right, and I think we have time for one more. Can CostMap project cost in future years?
Yes, CostMap can project essentially what it does is it applies an industry standard increase based on market trends. And so those can be projected out, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, years in advance to help estimate that stuff that many years out. So if I want to do a CIP project in 3 years and 5 years, that can be done, and that can also be defined at the user level that can pick that individual amount. And to kind of add on to what the previous question was when it comes to different hours and whatnot, you have the ability, the user has the ability to add in local environment factors, right? So Cost Map is going to get you an estimate based on your 3-digit zip, but there's likely to be special consideration for your particular location, and then those factors can be added into that estimate to take those into consideration.
Awesome. Thank you to both of our speakers. Unfortunately, that's all we have time for, folks. Just a quick reminder, there's going to be a brief 3-question survey that appears on your screen at the conclusion of the broadcast. Feel free to send in any additional questions. We'll reach out to you following the broadcast. Thank you so much for your time. Have a great day.
Thanks, Shannon.